on the undrafted free agent guys being confirmed. So we could talk about these guys here, Matt, and they might never even walk in the building. So we'll caveat everything we say with that. But it's almost a far more interesting part for me than the 5th and 6th rounds, and even the 7th to a degree, definitely the 7th, because agents ultimately want their guys to go undrafted because they're going to get a bigger signing bonus. Obviously not confirmed, so we've not seen the contract details. There was some reports of what teams had paid signing bonuses, and there was some chunky ones this year. And ultimately, like, the likelihood of an undrafted free agent statistically has got a good chance, particularly 7th and 6th round, less so 5th. So we take Myron Cunningham then, because I've watched a number of games with him, and I'm colouringly intrigued, right? Because I think there's definitely an element there of it's messy at times. Like you said, the foot speed does not match the hand speed, but he's got 34.5-inch arms, and that bails him out a number of times. But if you watch him against Bama, if you watch him against Auburn, if you watch him against Texas last year, all those games that I kind of flicked through today and a couple last week, and there's something to like there, and you can see why does it, and it doesn't look good at times, but he's so effective. I kept flicking on the next play, expect he's going to blow one soon. He's going to blow one soon. He's going to give up a TFL. He's going to give up a sack, and he doesn't. And I think, we talked about it a little bit last week that ultimately Laramie Tussle's not going to be here for a long time, and I think people are going to make a piece of that. And your needs of today are not your needs of tomorrow. So guys like this intrigue the hell out of me because ultimately they could come in and play a role. And look, I've kind of had my eyes set on undrafted free agents many a time, and it's never come to fruition. Yeah. But certainly, I think Myron Cunningham has and he's a guy that he's a JUCO transfer from Illinois. He played 2 seasons in the SEC, serviceable big program. He's got all he's 40 timers in the 5, so I think it was like 5.28 or something. So that'll kind of rule him out. I think as well in terms of analytical kind of sketches on him, but there's something there that I like, and there's a play against Auburn where he pulls from the left tackle spot, because my knock on him was I thought he's light with his hands, and I thought in pass protection at times he is, but there's a play where he comes around and he converts that 325 pounds mass to power at the second level, and you hear it on the broadcast, which is quite hard to do at a college game because the volume is a lot louder than some of the country club fields you get at the pros, and you hear it. So I can see why they like him. George Warhop will be a project for him, the offensive line coach. But yeah, there's something there that I think is likeable. It's transferable. A lot of work, but I think if you compare it to, say, what Charlie Heck's take was like coming out of North Carolina, I think it's better than that. And Heck was a 4th round pick because he came from pedigree, etc. So, not all players are created equal, but once you're in the building, it doesn't matter where the hell you're drafted. So Cunningham might be completely wrong, and as we said, we might not even sign the guy. But I think for me, he's interesting.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. In terms of the people that we've signed, there's room for him to make an impact, especially not just this year, but a couple of years down the road if he can actually stick with the roster.
Well, that's it, and I think you can never have enough tackles in the building if you can find a way to IR stash him in his first year or something like that. Then that might be the way to go. But that he's certainly one that I think for me is interesting. Now the second name you mentioned, Kolby Harvell-Peel from Oklahoma State. He kind of plays both safety spots at times. He's got a terrible habit. We talked about safeties coming down and missing their kind of their angle, or taking the wrong pursuit angle on ball carriers. There's a play against Iowa State where him and the corner both get fixated on, I think it's the slot receiver, and then Charlie Kolar's up for a long gain sort of thing. And there's a couple of other plays where he kind of gets caught underneath at times. Very, very kind of nosy as a safety. Definitely he's got a special teams role, I think, in terms of getting downfield. The athleticism's there. Again, didn't run necessarily a great 40 time, so I think that probably pushed him down because people are so fixated on speed. I think he is probably a guy who can play in a cover 2 shell in time. But for me, there's definitely a guy there who can, at times, looks like a draftable safety. He makes a great stop. I can't think it's the game against TCU. on a 3rd and 1, and he comes down, and when he gets it right, it looks great. And I think that could transfer to special teams where there's less traffic, there's less sort of reading of the cues, and over time perhaps you can develop them into something. But yeah, at a spot where we're definitely weak on this roster, and I think people are expecting Eric Murray to kind of play a role. You want as many options as possible to kind of come and fill that. So I think there's definitely a lot to like about Peel.
Yeah, I agree. I was sort of, as I was going through these guys, in just terms of making it relatable to people, I was trying to think of guys on the roster that they compare to. And when I was looking at him, I thought AJ Moore replacement in terms of just like 4th or 5th safety. He's at his best when he's coming downhill. The ball production, I think, is a little misleading. I think it won't necessarily translate, but I love his instincts in zone. I don't think you necessarily want to put him on an island. I don't think you want to put a ton of responsibility, but in terms of underneath play, I think he's really smart at just dialing in. The downside of that is, as you mentioned, his aggression can sort of be a double-edged sword for him. And so that's something he needs to rein back a little bit and pick his battles. And I think special teams would allow him to sort of reign free.
Yeah, I think special teams, I'm not quite sure if he's got quite the speed over that 40 time as a gunner, but certainly in the second and third wave coming down there, then I think he's a guy that you can hope to clear out. You wouldn't want to be the last line of defence. I think if you put him out on defence early, I'm sure you'll see him in the preseason get caught out. I'd put money on that, but an interesting one. Now, a third one you talked about, and again we talked about last week, but it's good to dive into these guys. Damion Daniels from Nebraska. First step quickness is something, if you watch the Michigan State, I put out a kind of a screen grab of his get off going up against the centre. He's got a really good ability to get off the ball quickly, and he's probably his go-to and his best, and probably arguably his only move, but he kind of swims over very quickly and can kind of fit, kind of squeeze up into the gap up in between the the A and the B gap there. Predominantly A gap kind of guy. He's, as you said, he consumes double teams. He definitely translates at sort of 3-2-5 as a one tech, and I think we need somebody like that, because ultimately I think Lopez kind of played a lot of one tech kind of responsibility last year at times. You perhaps want him as a 3 the more that he shows kind of a blitz ability or a rush ability, because he did start to get pretty good at that at points last year. Great against the run, but ultimately you need 2 of everything in this 4-man front. So yeah, a guy who potentially could make the roster, and again probably pushes guys like Ross, albeit not exactly the same role, but numbers in there with Booker. Ross Blacklock might be outside looking in if they're going to give him another chance, because you can probably only take 4 to 5 guys in the interior there. But Daniels, I thought, shows a lot of promise, I think, in terms of potential, because those kind of guys, there's not a lot between a 4th round nose tackle and an undrafted guy. The margins are pretty thin. It's not a glamorous job. There's only so much that can show up. You're not going to show up in the stats column. There's different ways to win, leverage and technique in the trenches. So yeah, I think that, of the 3, perhaps Daniels is up there as a kind of intriguing guy that that may find maybe a practice roster kind of a guy year 1, but a lot to like there on his tape at Nebraska, and if he's going to be the next Gerard Crick, number 93 from Nebraska, then that might be another one that translates over.
Yeah, there are definitely worse possibilities for him to end up being next step. To your point, I think that Ross Blacklock is very interesting considering how this draft went. We expected a lot of edge help, especially with the depth of this class, and what we got in return was a 3 tech and a 1 technique out of this. And so he was definitely had some surges last year, a little bit up and down. I think this draft has definitely put him on notice, and it'll definitely be a storyline to watch during camp to see how he makes it
through training camp. But Matt, thank you very much for your time. Thanks for joining us this week again, and we'll be back again next week to talk some schedule and a bit of rookie minicamp.